All right, welcome back. So it's been a minute since we've done a video on Old Blue, our not so blue budget drag car. Not so blue yet, it will be. If you're new to the channel, this is a 95 model. It was a V6 car. My 13-year-old son bought this. This is his car. He's 14 now. And so this is his project. I'm just helping him along. So in this video, we're putting in an 8.8 rear end. And this one's out of a Lincoln Mark VII. This is it. This is it right here. Hang on. Oop. There it is. Okay, so there's a lot of conflicting information when it comes to a rear end out from underneath a Lincoln. Some people say it'll work. Some will say, no, it's too wide. The brakes are complicated, or the brakes are too big, or they're outdated. The parking brake is too complicated to get it to work with the Mustang setup. The truth is we weren't looking for a Lincoln Mark VII 8.8. Was actually looking for one out from underneath an SN95. Now, I found one on the marketplace, on Facebook Marketplace. The guy told me it was from a Mustang, he just didn't know what year. And so I got in touch with him. He took some measurements for me. I don't remember what the exact width was, but it was the same as what was on a New Edge. And so I just assumed, okay, it's a New Edge rear. I know they're like 1.5 inches wider, I think, which was fine. I was okay with the width because from the factory, the wheels to me they're sucked in a little too far, and that extra 3/4 of an inch on each side I thought would look better. When I went to go pick it up, the brakes weren't on it. The brake pieces were just in a tote, and he said those are the brakes, those go with it. So I just loaded everything up. So once I got it home and started looking at everything, noticed the brakes were different, but I didn't know what the difference was between the V6 Mustangs and the GTs. I just kind of assumed that the GTs would have a better brake package versus the V6 ones. Turns out that's incorrect. I know that now, but I didn't at the time. So if you've got a V6 Mustang and you're wanting to do a V8 conversion and you need an 8.8 rear, you may actually want to go with the Lincoln. Now, I don't know about your particular area, but here, right now, as of this recording, any 8.8 I can find out from underneath a Mustang is $300. The Explorers are about $350, and that's not a direct bolt-in. I mean, you got to do some modifications to make that work. Anyway, so all the GT 8.8s are like $300 right now where I'm at. This one, I picked it up for $200, so I feel like that was a pretty decent deal. So they use these 8.8s in the Lincoln Mark 7s from 84 to, it's 83 or 84, we'll just say 84. 84 to 92. 84 through 90 had a different size rotor. It was a larger rotor. It was over 11.25 inches, like 11.3/8, something like that. And 91, 92, it had a smaller rotor. It was like 10.5, I think is what it was. But I can show you the difference on that. This one that we've got it's the earlier model. It's the 84 through 90. Here's one of the rotors here. It's not, it's not a solid rotor. It's vented. Here's the comparison. Here's the Mustang. You see, it's a solid rotor. The Lincoln, it's vented, and I don't know if you can tell, but the Lincoln's a good bit bigger. Also, the Lincoln caliper is also much bigger than the Mustang. And at first, since I was okay with the width, at first I was like, I'm just going to keep all the Lincoln brakes. We'll just go with that for now. And once I started doing some price comparison, the Lincoln stuff was more expensive. And yes, the parking brake is different. And I didn't really want to get into engineering a way to make it work. And another thing, the piston in this caliper looks to be a little bigger than, well, looks to be a lot bigger than the Mustang one, and which makes sense. I think, you know, the Lincoln would have been a bigger car. But if you've got a bigger piston in the caliper, then the master cylinder is also going to be different. And I didn't know if the master cylinder in the Mustang would work. I just didn't know how well that would jive. So I just felt like it was best just to say screw it, get rid of all that stuff, and just get the Mustang stuff. So since the caliper is different, here is the caliper bracket. The Lincoln one versus the Mustang one, and there's, you know, no way to make the Mustang caliper bolt up to that. And to get these off, you've got to pull the axles out. So if you've got to pull the axles out, then I just figured, let's do some measuring. Let's see if we can, let's see what we'll interchange. And it turns out the housing itself is 1/4 of an inch bigger than the 7.5 housing that we pulled out of that one. So it's a 28, the Lincoln is a 28 spline rear end, just like the 7.5. And some of the rears in the Lincolns were open rears, some were limited slip. This one is a limited slip. It's a 308 gear, which I'm not happy about. That's not very drag racy, but that's okay for now. We just need to get going. Like David Freiberger says, you know, don't get it right, just get it going, and then, you know, you can improve from there. So that's the plan. We just got to get it going. But anyway, getting back to the axles, pull the axles out of both rears and the bracket, the caliper brackets off, and bolted all the Mustang stuff onto the housing and stuck the axles in, put the calipers on, and everything lined up. Even though the housing was 1/4 of an inch wider than the 7.5, everything's still lined up. So took everything into the shop, put it in the blast cabinet, blasted it, put some black paint on it, and Blaine and I, we took the rear end and we hosed it down with some oven cleaner and took some wire brushes to it, cleaned it up the best we could. A coat of black paint on that. It's not perfect, but you know what? It's fine. All right, so let's take a closer look here. All right, I'm just going to hit the high points here. The upper and the lower 4-link mounts, those are in the same place. Come around. Now this is different. I'm assuming that those are for the rear sway bar. I zoom in. There, it's actually on the gear, 308. Looks like 303, but it's 308. Here's you can see the clutch pack for the limited slip. Here's the carrier for the 7.5, and you can see nothing. Nothing. But so if you don't see those clutch packs, then that means it's an open rear end, one wheel peel. Right. Here's a comparison of the two axles. And this is why the Lincoln rear is actually wider. It's because it has ABS. You can see these are the Lincoln ones on the right. They've got this reluctor wheel around for the ABS sensor, and the Mustang ones do not. Right, here's our freshly painted brake parts, along with the new rotors and new gasket, new pads, our new calipers, and our new flex lines. Now the first thing we need to do is put the caliper brackets on. These are side specific. So this one has an L and an R, along with these brackets. You see this one is marked LH for the left hand. Anyway, get those on, then you can start putting this thing together. All right, for whatever reason, whenever I recorded this, the audio was worse than normal. So I decided I'd do a little bit of voiceover to try to explain what was going on. Basically what I was saying is that now would be a good time to replace the axle seals, but I'm not doing that. I cleaned them up and inspected them. The rubber was soft. It wasn't cracked. It didn't look worn or torn up or anything. So I decided just to leave them. Also, the axle bearings, they felt good too. I mean, there wasn't any weird spots. They didn't seem like they were damaged at all. So I just decided to go with it. Now I put a little bit of gear oil on the seal and on the axle bearings before I put the axles in. And once you put the axle in, you push it in towards the center to expose the groove for the C-clip. And then you push the C-clip in, and then once you get the C-clip inserted, you push the axle back out as far as it'll go. You do both axles this way. Then you need to insert the cross pin. The cross pin has a hole on one end of it for the cross pin bolt. Anyway, slide the cross pin in, then take your cross pin bolt. You'll need to put some Loctite on the threads and put that little dude in and torque it to 25 foot-pounds. Okay, speaking of the cross pin bolt, this is what it looks like in case you don't know. I know I didn't film any of the disassembly stuff, so I just wanted to take a moment and discuss my experience. And when I took the differential case off the Lincoln 88, there was no cross pin bolt in the carrier, and the cross pin was just, was just floating around. I was gonna just go to a regular auto parts store and get one, but the only ones they had were the Dorman brands, and reading the reviews, all the reviews were saying that they were too short. So I ended up getting one from Summit, Yukon Gear. When I did a Google search for the cross pin bolt, I came across a bunch of extractor kits, and it didn't take much research to find out that these little bolts are bad about breaking. Well, I've only rebuilt one other 8.8 in the past, and I didn't have any issues removing the bolt. But I knew I was going to have to take it out of the 7.5, and that's what we're looking at here is the carrier for the 7.5. But I knew I was going to have to take it out to get the axles out. So when I went to remove this, I was using my 8mm wrench, and I was just using steady pressure. I didn't want to do anything to shock it. Anyway, just steady, firm pressure, and the wrench actually, you're not going to be able to tell it on the camera, but it actually started bending. And I felt like if I continued to go that route, I was going to end up breaking the bolt. So what I did was I took my 5/16 wrench, which is, it's shorter, but it's much thicker, and it fits as well. It fits just as good as the 8mm. So I put it on, and then I took a hammer. I didn't just waylay on it, I didn't want to shock the bolt and cause it to break. But I did use firm hits, just repeated firm hits, and eventually it broke free. I don't know what it is, what part of the bolt actually sticks. I don't know if it's the threads or if it's, down in the shaft itself. I don't know. But because I haven't had that experience yet, and I hope I don't. But anyway, that was my experience. I just thought I would mention it, just something to keep in mind. Don't force it if it's not wanting to break free. Don't force it, but maybe try something like that. I don't know about an impact wrench. Maybe if you turned it down, it may do the trick, but I was afraid to use an impact. I thought it might be a little too much and it might snap it. Anyway,
if you're like me, you went to the parts store and you bought new calipers, you turned in your old ones as a core, and you get home and you've got a bag of hardware and you don't know exactly how this goes together because you've already turned in your old. All right, so what you need to do, first thing, just unbolt the caliper from this bracket. Just pull these two bolts off. Okay, with the hardware, you got 4 little clips that are for the brake pads.
And then you've got this piece. See this little ridge here? That's gonna fit right here on the caliper. So from the bottom side, well, shit. Okay, so from the bottom side, we're gonna, okay, I'm gonna slide that up in there. Okay, and then push up and back, and there, it's clipped on. You see? Okay, next on these brake shoes, if you look, you see the back side of this shoe is concave. And then you look at these clips. So you take a look at the clip. See this little tab here? That tab is gonna go on that concave part. So you just, if you'll just lay it on there like that and then twist up, it snaps into place. And need to take a little screwdriver and get on that ear and just bend it out just a little bit, just so it'll hold a little better. And I'm gonna take my little screwdriver, see if you can see, get in here, and then just push that tab out just a little. There we go, it'll hold a little better. I don't know that it's necessary, but it's certainly not gonna hurt. Okay, need to bolt this bracket on. All right, I'm not sure what the torque spec on that is, but about 2 to 3 ugga-duggas with the impact wrench should be sufficient. Yes, that's a mechanical term. Now take your brake shoes and slide them in. All right, the shoes have these little wings on the top. They're springs. And the outside shoe, the springs are gonna sit right in there. The inside shoe, the springs are gonna sit on this piece of hardware that we put in, and that it'll slide on that. I don't know if you can tell, but I took a little bit of wheel bearing grease and I put a real light layer on these surfaces here just to help that brake pad slide. To me, it seems a little easier to put on if you just put one bolt in and then rotate the caliper over. Those little springs seem to fight you less if you do it that way, versus just trying to slide it down and then put both bolts in. Get those tight, you're ready to put the brake lines on. When you buy new calipers or new hoses, it should come with some copper washers. If not, make sure you get these. The copper washer goes on each side of the block, and when you tighten that down, those washers compress and actually create the seal. That may be common knowledge, but there may be, you know, some people out there that don't know it, so I just thought I would include that. Brake hose on the Lincoln and the GT, I believe, are the same. They bolted somewhere around here. They had a long bracket that came up to the junction block, and then the hard lines came off of that to the calipers. And this end connected to the hard lines on the body. The 6-cylinder, however, was different. It actually connected to the tube via the vent tube. The vent tube went through and held it down. I'm assuming that the GTs were like that. It was in the center because being a V8, it had dual exhaust pipes coming over the rear end. Didn't want the brake lines to be in the way, to be an issue. I'm going to keep the 6-cylinder stuff. The reason I am is the hard lines, where the hard lines tie in on the body, is still over here. I don't want to go in and change that stuff because I'm trying to reuse as much of the brake lines as I can. And exhaust isn't going to be an issue. because I'm not running it all the way out to the back. I'm just going to put turn downs at the back of the mufflers. Anyway, and the vent tubes, I don't know if you can see, are much different. This is a GT, that's the short one, and this is the 6-cylinder, much longer. Anyway, before putting the vent tube in, also make sure you put some Teflon tape on there, otherwise it's going to leak. The brand new used 8.8 is in. So the next things on the list are, we've got the engine compartment. I've got to get it cleaned up and painted. I made some aluminum block-off plates and riveted those in. That's just to cover up some of the holes that's no longer being used. The second thing is the engine. We're actually on engine number 3. The first 2 engines I had were too wore out to use. And we just recently picked up a low mileage 5.0. It's supposed to be 80,000 miles. We'll see. Hopefully that's the case and it's not 280. Also, we picked up a supposed working AOD. We'll see. I've got to get it on the stand, get it tore apart, make sure everything is okay on that. I know I've got to replace some of the seals. Anyway, then get those 2 together, get those in the car, get the gas tank in, run fuel lines. We can start building the exhaust after that. Yeah, I think that's the short list. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something from it. See you next time.